Hi, and welcome to our screencast. I'm Jeremy from Sabik Offshore, and today we're going to be talking about IALA's update to our well-known guidelines of 0139. Now, while much of the content has remained the same, there have been some changes, and that's what I want to go over with you today. For reference, the titles of each slide have the specific section numbers that I'm talking about, and I have put some quoted text into the slides. But don't worry, I'm not going to be reading you a bunch of dry text. I want to talk to you about what those changes are and what that could mean for you and your future wind farm. So let's get started. Through a 3-year process, IALA has undergone a thorough review of 0139. The first thing to note is that the majority of the content has been shifted out of 139 into 2 spin-off documents. The first is G1162, the marking of offshore man-made structures. The second is 1163, the marking of breakwaters and barriers. Apparently, barriers and breakwaters is so complex that it needed its own document. What we need is contained within G1162. There are 2 sections in Chapter 2 that concern us. The first is 2.1, Man-Made Structures, which has general guidelines for all structures, and then more specifically 2.4, Offshore Wind Farms. So let's start out with the general changes, beginning with considerations prior to construction and decommissioning. We see a movement towards a risk-based approach. This encourages engagement between developers and local authorities for marking and lighting plan, bringing more consistency between wind farms and clarity to the expectations from the authorities, which could include an agreed-upon formal document. This risk assessment also builds in flexibility for special situations. Next, we have a change in the distance or range of lights. The new language takes into consideration that we're now going further offshore and spacing between Atons is getting larger. While the 5 nautical mile lantern is still standard, situations can arise where a stronger light may be required. This falls back onto the previous statement in moving towards a risk-based approach. Additionally, this section also recommends that Aton lighting is required at all phases. This is new, for the first time encouraging temporary lights for the construction and decommissioning phase. Here's something new. While not 100% relevant to our scope, we thought it worth mentioning that the section of marking cables and pipelines does need attention, especially regarding burial and navigable channel depth. This concludes the general changes, and now we'll dive into specifically marking offshore wind structures. New language has appeared, bringing more attention to the fact that other lighting can conflict with the Atons. Starting with the ID signs, it specifically states, quote, "If illuminated, the light should be of an intensity which will not obscure Atons or affect navigation in the vicinity," unquote. Additionally, there is more guidance for legibility and consistency of lettering for ID signs. As with the ID signs, work lights such as downlighting on ladders and access platforms, must not reduce the conspicuity of the marking lights. This is an important acknowledgement that in some cases, the marine lights have been overpowered by other lighting, thus increasing risk. While these recommendations do not specifically state how to deal with these issues, Sabik Offshore is undertaking research to determine the best way to safely illuminate workspace areas while not interfering with the marine lanterns. Additionally, it is recommended that work lights are extinguished when personnel are not working on or at the structure. This means that dumb lights are no longer acceptable. Some type of smart solution is required to allow safe access to or exit of the structure while making sure that the work lighting is turned off at all other times. Here's a new one: exit arrows. We're not sure how this would work or if it will be adopted, but it is worth mentioning that the new guidelines suggest consideration of an exit sign within an offshore wind farm. This is to help vessels that have lost their orientation to find their way out of a large wind farm. If you have any ideas on how to approach this, please reach out to us. We'll definitely be putting our thinking caps on. Mounting height. The word ideally has been added to the suggested mounting height of the Atons. This acknowledges the ever-growing size of these structures, and that it is not always practical to mount at the specified heights. Therefore, quote, ideally, lights are located not less than 6 meters and not more than 30 meters above hat, unquote, thus giving flexibility for special situations. Next, we have a wording change and clarification of what is 360-degree visibility. Quote, marking lights should be visible to the mariner from all directions on the horizontal plane, unquote. This clarifies that we're not talking about 360 degrees around the light, but the structure that the mariner sees. For us, this means that directional lights such as the Sabik Offshore marine lantern are acceptable as long as 360-degree visibility is achieved around the structure. We know that an offshore wind farm is to be seen as a group. So what do we need to know about isolated turbines or other structures? It is important to understand that turbines and substations are treated differently when isolated. When standing alone, an offshore substation is treated as and should be marked as an oil and gas platform. Isolated turbines are different. Also important to note is that lanterns should be visible at a close range as well. In this section, we start looking at floating structures. Here it is specified that the structure should be yellow from the water line up to 15 meters. Also, considering floating turbines will have mooring systems, additional buoyage could be required. A specified or suggested vertical divergence has been taken out of the language. It has instead been replaced with a reference to IALA guideline G1065, which gives advice on the vertical divergence of lights. This can result in the use of wider angle lenses, which may be required for floating structures. It is also mentioned again that the Atons need to be visible to mariners at a short distance as well. Your Sabik Offshore representative can guide you through these calculations to ensure that you have the correct lantern for your floating structure. Generally, a wind farm is marked as a group. A minor word change has been added. The lights should have a minimal nominal range of 5 nautical miles. With a minimum of 5 nautical miles, larger ranges such as 6 or 7 could be specified. A new section has been added talking about irregularly shaped offshore wind farms. Depending on the risk assessment, additional buoys could be required. Another new section is the marking of routes between or through offshore wind farms. This takes into account that wind farms are getting larger and closer together, and that there may be a need to mark a route between adjacent wind farms, or that you may need to go through a wind farm, meaning additional aids to navigation could be needed. Lastly, just a terminology change. What we have traditionally called fog signals are now called hazard warning signals. So this concludes our overview of the update to IALA 0139, now which we refer to as G1162. If you have any questions about this and how it may apply to you, our regional experts are ready to help. Click the contact link below in the description to find your regional representative. Thank you for your attention. Sabik Offshore, your experts in marking offshore wind farms.